Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are about to begin. Your Excellencies, the Honorable UP Board of Regents, fellow members of the Academe, our champions in government agencies, our friends and distinguished guests. Welcome to everyone who have joined us here in the historic Macom Hall and via live streaming on the TVUP YouTube channel this special day for the conferment of Doctor of Laws, Honoris Causa, upon our honoree by the University of the Philippines. We shall commence the conferment ceremony with the academic procession. We would like to invite members of the UP academic community to enter the hall to be led by the University Marshal. The University Marshal, Executive Vice President Teodoro J. Herbosa. The faculty of the UP College of Law, represented by former Dean Justice Marvic MVF Leonen, Associate Dean Professor Dr. J. L. Batungbacal, and the Dean of the UP College of Law, Associate Professor Fides Cordero Tan. The Chancellor of UP Diliman, Chancellor Fidel R. Nemenzo. Officials of the University of the Philippines System, represented by the Vice President for Public Affairs, Dr. Elena E. Pernia. The members of the UP Board of Regents, Honorable John Isaac B. Punzalan, Honorable Maria Arlisa D. Aguiluz, Honorable Angelo A. Jimenez, the mace of the University, carried by the Secretary of the University and of the Board of Regents, Attorney Roberto M. J. Lara. The President of the University of the Philippines, Professor Danilo Lardizabal Concepcion. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the entrance of our honoree, Justice Antonio Tirol Carpio. Please stand for the Philippine National Anthem.
Bayang magiliw, pelos ng silanganan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, buyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulubi, kita pasisingil, sa lagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mo bangag, may ilang ang tula at awit sa paglayang tinamahal. Ang kisap ng watawat mo'y nagumpay na nagtitigil, ang bituin at araw niya kailan ang ating magtitigil. Lupa ng araw ng warang aming pagsita, buhay langit sa atin.
we request Mrs. Ruth N. Carpio to join our honoree on stage. We are very delighted to present to you a special musical tribute to our honoree by the recipient of the Ani ng Dangal Award by the National Commission on Culture and the Arts, or the NCCA. These two songs were specially chosen for this occasion because they evoke the innermost desires and grandest dreams of our honoree for the Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome UP's pride, the UP Singing Ambassadors, under the baton of its founder and conductor, Dr. Edgardo Lumbera Manguiat.
To dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to run where the brave dare not go, to right the unrightable wrong, to love, hear and chase from afar, to try when your arms are too weary, to reach the unreachable star. This is my cry. This is my quest. To flatter our hopeless, to flatter our soul, to fight for the right, without question or part, without question, rebelling to fortune, to love and heavenly cross. And I know if I'll only be true to this glorious quest, that my heart will lie peaceful and calm when I'm laid to my rest. And the world will be better for this, that one man torn and covered with scars, still strong with his last ounce of courage, to reach the unreachable star. Bayan kong Pilipinas, lupain ang kita't bulaklak, pag-ibig ang sa kanyang anak, nakalay ng gana't tiyak. At sa kanyang yuming at ganda, bayan ko, binihag ka, nasad dusa. Iwan ang may layang lumipad, umingo at umiiyak. Bayan ka kayang sakdal nila, ang di magnasang makalagpas. Pilipinas kong minumukya, ugat ng luha ko't kalika. Aking adika, mabigat ang sakdalaya.
Thank you very much, UP Singing Ambassadors. To introduce our honoree, the Dean of the UP College of Law, Associate Professor Fides Cordero Tan.
Antonio Carpio, Mrs. Ruth Nguyen Carpio. Mga kasalukuyan at retiradong hukom ng Korte Suprema, kapiling natin si Justice Marvick Leonan and Justice Rosemary Carandang, Pangulong Danilo L. Concepcion, ang lupo ng mga rehente, mga pinuno at tagapangasiwa ng ating minamahal na Universidad ng Pilipinas, mga nagsipagtapos sa UP College of Law, our beloved alumni, Justice Conchita Morales, Ambassador Ramon del Rosario, at sa inyong lahat na patuloy na lumalaban, mga pinagpipitagang panauhin. Ang aking tungkulin at karangalan sa hapong ito ay ipakilala ang ating tampok na panauhin. Siyang gagawaran ng titulong Doctor of Laws, Honoris Causa. Simulan natin sa mga kwento ng kanyang kabiyak ng puso na si Ruth at ng anak na si Audrey. Ipinanganak siya sa Davao, lumaki sa Davao, nagtapos ng grade school at high school sa basic education units ng Ateneo de Davao University. Isang tubong Davaoenyo. Pero hindi ata sila close sa ibang mga taga Davao. He graduated from the Ateneo de Manila with a degree in economics. He met Ruth and fell in love, seducing Ruth with his brilliance and copies of The Guidon, the official student publication of the Ateneo, of which he was the editor-in-chief. He wanted to take up MBA in Ateneo still. He must have loved the color blue so much. But was persuaded by his father, Bernardo Carpio, himself a lawyer, to take up law instead. So you see, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, UP Law was not in his original life plan. But as it happens many times in our life happens just when you are making other plans. Our honoree graduated valedictorian cum laude of class 1975. There is here a backstory. He was supposed to graduate with class 74, but he got delayed because he was suspended due to fraternity intramurals. There's another word for that. It rhymes with mumble. At that time, the top-ranked student and valedictorian in waiting of class 75 was Rosemary D. Carandang. But since our honoree would all of a sudden graduate with class 75 and not class 74 as a consequence of his suspension, his grade average edged out Rory Carandang, who then became the class salutatorian. Valedictorian and salutatorian would end up sitting together as justices of the Supreme Court. I heard they are friends. No hard feelings from that academic competition of a very long time ago. Ruth gave birth to their son Ronnie while he was reviewing for the bar. He ranked 6th in the bar exams. He established a law firm with his fraternity brothers, worked himself delirious, and bullied everyone else, with affection of course, to keep pace with him, in the process building a law firm that would influence the political patterns of this country in the many years following. In the meantime, he found time to teach, teaching in UP Law for 9 years. I think that this is the part of his resume that is most flattering to us, that the UP College of Law can claim him as faculty, isang guro na humugis ng isip at puso ng ating mga mag-aaral, na ngayoy mga batikan at dalubhasang tagapagtanggol ng batas. I have his word that he will teach again. Walang atrasan. He entered the government in 92 as Chief Presidential Legal Advisor, left Malacanang in 96, reinvented himself as a coffee connoisseur by opening a chain of coffee shops, re-entered government with an appointment as Justice of the Supreme Court in 2001 at age 52. Ruth says that our honoree was ambivalent about joining the Supreme Court, which he described as the land of the half-dead. But to the land of the half-dead he went. After that, he hardly smiled. Our beloved alumnus, retired Supreme Court Justice Vicente V. Mendoza, UP Law 57, says of our honoree, as a member of the Supreme Court, he wrote the ponencias in some of the momentous cases, among which were the cases of Gamboa versus Teves, Magallona versus Ermita, and Chavez versus Public Estates Authority, which show his erudition, integrity, fearlessness, and independence. On a personal note, I want him to know that he truly makes me happy when he would send me through Viber the deposit slips of his donations to the UP Law Scholarship Fund, both in the JD and LLM programs. And to the very successful alumni of the UP Law who would like to duplicate the generosity of our honoree, the bank account details of the UP College of Law Scholarship Trust Fund will be made available upon request. Ang tawag po dyan ay patalastas. He was militant in his college days, calling the people in government the enthroned rascals. He is militant still. He is militant evermore. He is daring, and he dared. I quote Senator Frank Drilon, UP Law 69. When Chinese incursions on Mischief Reef and Scarborough Shoal began in 2012, our honoree lost no time in launching a personal crusade in defense of the Philippine sovereignty, joined by like-minded patriots. Their efforts led to the brazen act of taking a military superpower accountable to an international court and winning an award striking down as baseless China's 9-dash line claim. Our honoree went on a worldwide hunt for ancient maps, shifting the discourse on the West Philippine Sea from verbal to cartographic visualization. Exhibits of the extensive map collection, including the Murillo Velarde map of 1734, would be mounted all across the country. A small part of the map exhibit is on display in the lobby of Malcolm Hall this afternoon. One day only. We thank Attorney Elma Romero Liogardo, UP Law 84, for putting it together. The distinction of this afternoon's conferment reflects the distinction of its recipient. But more than the honor to the conferee, the conferment is an honor to the university. UP Law class of 1975, the best Chief Justice we never had, a loving husband and a dutiful father, and the champion of the West Philippine Sea who evokes in the Filipino a sense of hope and of courage. Sa ngalan ng Universidad ng Pilipinas at ng Kolehiyo ng Batas, sa inyong lahat na kapwa kong nagmamahal sa ating bayan, buong karangalan kong inihaharap sa inyo, ang kagalang-galang, retired Supreme Court Senior Associate Justice Antonio Tirol Carpio.
May I call upon Regent John Isaac Punsalon and Regent Maria Elisa de Aguilos to witness the conferment. May I call upon Regent Angelo A. Jimenez and Mrs. Ruth Carpio to assist in the conferment. President Danilo L. Concepcion. To read the citation in English, the Chancellor of the University of the Philippines, Diliman, Dr. Fidel R. Nemenzo.
For his distinguished service to the nation as Senior Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the Philippines, exhibiting impartiality, accountability, and dedication to upholding the Constitution and the rule of law. For ardently defending human rights and championing freedom of expression, the foundation of a free, open, and democratic society. For advocating the protection and preservation of the country's territorial rights and maritime sovereignty in the West Philippine Sea amid great adversity. For his selflessness and love for country, upholding our sovereign rights with tenacity and perseverance in international courts. For his statesmanship and diplomacy, tirelessly promoting our territorial rights through research, writings, and global speaking engagements. For his judgments and rulings marked with wisdom, foresight, and virtue in many landmark cases that have influenced our lives and will continue to impact generations of Filipinos. For carrying out his duties and functions as a public official over the years with honor, integrity, and excellence, for which he has been continuously lauded. For being an outstanding lawyer, professorial lecturer, and graduate of the University of the Philippines College of Law. For his exemplary service to the university as a member of the Board of Regents. For being a true icon of the Filipino people, embodying a courageous life led in service to the country. The Board of Regents of the University of the Philippines, upon the recommendation of the President of the University and the Committee on Honorary Degrees, today confers upon Antonio T. Carpio the degree of Doctor of Laws, Honoris Causa.
To read the citation in Filipino, the Secretary of the University and of the Board of Regents, Attorney Roberto M.J. Lara.
Para sa kanyang katangi-tanging paglilingkod sa sambayanan bilang Senior Associate Justice ng Korte Suprema ng Pilipinas na nagpapamalas ng katapatan, pananagutan at dedikasyon sa pagtataguyod ng konstitusyon at ng pananaig sa batas. Para sa masigasig na pagtatanggol sa karapatang pangtao at paggiit sa kalayaan sa pamamahayag na siyang saligan ng malaya, bukas at demokratikong lipunan. Para sa advokasyang protektahan at pangalagaan ang karapatang pang-teritoryo at soberenyang pandagat ng bansa sa West Philippine Sea sa harap ng matitinding bantang yurakan ito. Para sa kaniyang walang pag-iimbot na pag-ibig sa bansa at matyagang pagpupunyagi upang itaguyod ang karapatang pang-soberenya sa mga pandaigdigang hukuman. Para sa kanyang estadismo at diplomasya at walang kapagurang pagtataguyod sa karapatang pang-teritoryo ng bansa sa pamamagitan ng pananaliksik, mga sulatin, at pagtatalumpati at pakikipagtalastasan sa iba't ibang panig ng daigdig. Para sa kanyang mga hatol at pasyang may tatak ng karunungan, pagkamaingat, at katwiran sa maraming mahalagang kasong may malaking impluensya at patuloy na makakaapekto sa buhay ng maraming salinlahi ng mga Pilipino. Para sa pagtupad ng kanyang mga tungkulin bilang isang pampublikong opisyal sa loob ng maraming taon na may dangal, integridad at husay, kung kaya patuloy siyang kinikilala at pinararangalan. Para sa kanyang pagiging namumukod-tanging abogado, professorial lecturer at alumnus ng Kolehiyo ng Batas ng Universidad ng Pilipinas. para sa kanyang huwarang paglilingkod sa universidad bilang kasapi ng lupon ng mga rehente. Para sa pagiging tunay na simbolo ng sambayanang Pilipino, larawan ng matapang na buhay na inaalay na sa paglilingkod sa bansa. Ipinagkakaloob ngayon ng lupon ng mga rehente ng Universidad ng Pilipinas, alinsunod sa rekomendasyon ng Pangulo ng Universidad ng Pilipinas at ng Komite ng Titulong Pandangal kay Antonio D. Carpio ang titulong Doktorado ng Batas, Honoris Causa. Bilang katibayan ng pinakamataas na pagkilala at karangalan, iginagawad ng Universidad ng Pilipinas ang diploma at kasuotang pangdangal ngayong ikasampu ng Disyembre taong 2020. Nilagdaan Danilo L. Concepcion, Pangulo. Pinatutunayan Roberto M.J. Lara, kalihim ng Universidad at ng lupon ng mga rehente.
Ladies and gentlemen, may we present to you Antonio Tirol Carpio, Doctor of Laws. To deliver his lecture, Dr. Antonio Tirol Carpio.
President Danilo L. Concepcion, members of the Board of Regents, Justice Mario Victor F. Leonen, Justice Rosemary D. Carandang, Justice Conchita Carpio Morales, Secretary Albert De Rosario, Dean Fides C. Cordero Tan of the College of Law, officials of the university, members of the academic community of the university, distinguished guests, fellow students of the law, a pleasant afternoon to everyone. I wish to thank the law faculty, the University Council, and the Board of Regents for the conferment of this honorary doctoral degree. I am truly honored and humbled by this recognition. This will certainly motivate me to do more for our country and people in defense of our sovereignty and sovereign rights. And I will always treasure this award. One of the greatest challenges facing the country today is how to defend and preserve our sovereign rights in our exclusive economic zone in the West Philippine Sea. What is at stake is a maritime area larger than the total land area of the Philippines. And this huge maritime area is rich in fish, oil, gas, and other natural resources. I remember in early 1995, when China seized from the Philippines Mischief Reef, a submerged atoll within the EEZ of the Philippines in the West Philippine Sea. I was then the Chief Presidential Legal Counsel of President Fidel Ramos. The Philippines was totally defenseless. We did not have the military capability to take back Mischief Reef. We could not invoke the Philippine-U.S. Mutual Defense Treaty because Mischief Reef is outside the territory of the Philippines. We could not go to a tribunal under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, because China had not yet ratified UNCLOS at the time. This incident left a deep scar in my mind that a powerful state could just grab what legally belonged to a weaker state, and there was no power on earth that could right such a wrong. China had demonstrated to the world that might makes right. Ominously, China was claiming not only Mischief Reef, but 80% of our EEZ in the West Philippine Sea. It was obvious that Mischief Reef was neither the first nor the last geologic feature that China would seize from the Philippines. On August 16, 2011, I penned the unanimous decision in Magallona versus Executive Secretary, upholding the amendment to our archipelagic baselines to conform to UNCLOS. This case opened my eyes that we could defend and preserve our sovereign rights in the West Philippine Sea through the rule of law by questioning before an UNCLOS tribunal the validity of China's historic claim under its 9-dash line. We had, however, to first put our house in order by bringing our archipelagic baselines into conformity with UNCLOS so that we could go to an UNCLOS tribunal with clean hands. The petitioners in Magallona wanted the Supreme Court to declare the waters enclosed by the Treaty of Paris lines as Philippine territorial sea in violation of UNCLOS. As I stressed in my ponencia in Magallona, the absence of an UNCLOS-compliant archipelagic baselines weakens the country's case in any international dispute over Philippine maritime space. True enough, one of the judges in the arbitral tribunal at The Hague asked why the Philippines was questioning China's historic 9-dash line when the Philippines itself had its own historic Treaty of Paris lines. We submitted to the tribunal the Magallona decision to prove that the Philippines had abandoned the Treaty of Paris lines and we were already totally compliant with UNCLOS, showing that we had come to the tribunal with clean hands. Coming to any court or tribunal with unclean hands means getting your case dismissed outright. On October 29, 2011, barely 2 months after the Magallona decision, I launched my advocacy to bring China's 9-dash line before an UNCLOS tribunal. In my address at the 50th anniversary of the College of Law of Ateneo de Davao University, I stated, if China's 9-dash line is questioned before an UNCLOS tribunal, there is no doubt that it would be declared as having no basis in international law. China's 9-dash line cannot coexist with UNCLOS. Upholding one means killing the other. The challenge then for the Philippines as well as for the other states trampled upon by China's 9-dash line is how to bring the validity of China's 9-dash line to an UNCLOS tribunal, given that China has opted out in 2006 from the compulsory dispute settlement mechanism of UNCLOS, end of quote. Fortunately, our own academics and graduates of the University of the Philippines helped find a way out of this jurisdictional dilemma. I had what I called the UNCLOS group, composed of Dr. J. Batumbacal, Dr. Dayan Desierto, the late Dr. Eileen Baviera, Attorney Lani Sumera, Attorney John Molo, Attorney Elma Legardo, and whenever they happened to be in Manila, Dr. Suzette Suarez and Dr. Lowell Bautista. We met periodically at a Chinese restaurant to find a way to question China's 9-dash line before an UNCLOS tribunal, despite China's opting out of compulsory arbitration. The discussions of this UNCLOS group gave me a very clear idea on the way forward. I submitted to then Foreign Affairs Secretary Albert Del Rosario a memorandum outlining how the Philippines could initiate an arbitration to question China's 9-dash line before an UNCLOS tribunal. Secretary Del Rosario was very receptive, and he followed my advice to secure the opinion of known international legal experts in the US and Europe on the law of the sea to determine the feasibility of questioning China's 9-dash line before an UNCLOS tribunal. The response from the international legal experts was positive. Very soon thereafter, China seized Scarborough Shoal from the Philippines following the April to June 2012 standoff between Philippine and Chinese vessels. In December 2012, when President Benigno Aquino III realized that China would remain permanently in Scarborough Shoal, he instructed Secretary Del Rosario to file the arbitration case against China. With the preliminary work already mostly done earlier, the Philippines filed the following month, on January 22, 2013, its statement of claim against China pursuant to UNCLOS. The Philippines didn't have the military capability to take back Scarborough Shoal in any kind of armed struggle or armed conflict with China. So the Philippines brought China to a forum where there was a level playing field, where the dispute would be resolved solely on the law and on the facts, regardless of how many warships, warplanes, missiles, or nuclear bombs China possessed. We neutralized China's military might when we brought the dispute before an UNCLOS tribunal. Might was no longer right. Secretary Albert Del Rosario requested me to explain to foreign policy makers, university academics, and think tanks in Europe, North America, and Asia why the Philippines filed the arbitration against China, and why the Philippines was on the right side of the law, the facts, and history. And so in 2015, I embarked on a world lecture tour to explain the South China Sea dispute from the Philippine perspective. To most people, especially those in the West, China's claim to ownership of the South China Sea since 2,000 years ago seemed plausible because China has an ancient civilization. We had to correct this glaringly erroneous perception. The battle to defend our sovereign rights in the West Philippine Sea is also a battle for the hearts and minds of the peoples of the world. For in the end, we need world opinion on our side to enforce any favorable arbitral ruling against a nuclear-armed China. The July 12, 2016 award that invalidated China's 9-dash line has affirmed with finality the Philippines has a full EEZ in the West Philippine Sea. And yes, the arbitral tribunal expressly declared that Mischief Reef is part of Philippine EEZ. So if China is still in Mischief Reef today, it is there illegally as a squatter. Sea level rise by the end of the century and beyond will submerge all the naturally formed islands of China in the West Philippine Sea. Once submerged, they will form part of Philippine EEZ if within 200 nautical miles from our archipelagic baselines. In short, an UNCLOS tribunal has declared with finality settled with finality the maritime dispute between the Philippines and China in the West Philippine Sea. Nature, however, will decide with finality the territorial dispute between the Philippines and China in the West Philippine Sea. Time is definitely on the side of the Philippines. Whenever ships of foreign naval powers sail in the West Philippine Sea to conduct freedom of navigation and overflight operations, including naval drills, they enforce the arbitral ruling because their naval operations can take place only if there is an EEZ in the West Philippine Sea. In the West Philippine Sea, only the Philippines can claim an EEZ because the Philippines is the sole adjacent coastal state in the West Philippine Sea. These freedom of navigation and overflight operations of foreign naval powers, including naval drills, conducted regularly in accordance with international law and UNCLOS, are the most tangible and effective enforcement of the arbitral ruling. Let me thank again the international team of foreign lawyers who brilliantly represented the Philippines before the arbitral tribunal and who won for the Philippines a truly landmark victory. We owe them a debt of gratitude. I have on many occasions explained the many legal, peaceful, and non-confrontational ways of enforcing the arbitral ruling. These are actions which the Philippines can take anytime, even in the administrations that will succeed the Duterte administration. Recently, we have seen some light at the end of the tunnel. The Philippines and China signed last November 27, 2018, the Memorandum of Agreement, or MOU, to cooperate in exploiting oil and gas in the West Philippine Sea under the service contract system of the Philippines. In August of 2019, the Philippines and China signed the Terms of Reference, or TOR, to implement the MOU. A final meeting was supposed to have been held in Manila between Philippine and Chinese officials last March 2020, to vet the partnership agreement that should have been forged by that time between China National Offshore Oil Company and Forum Energy. Forum Energy holds Service Contract 72, awarded by the Philippine government, with an area covering Reed Bank, which has gas reserves much greater than Malampaya. However, the pandemic prevented the holding of the meeting in Manila, and a new date for a meeting has yet to be announced. In the meantime, President Duterte has lifted the moratorium on exploration activities in the West Philippine Sea, a moratorium that the Philippine government imposed in 2014 after Chinese Coast Guard vessels harassed Philippine Commission ships, survey ships, operating in the West Philippine Sea. This time, the Chinese government announced that it will not stop the exploration activities of Philippine survey ships in the West Philippine Sea because a consensus has been reached between China and the Philippines, referring to the MOU and TOR. Under the service contract system of the Philippines, the service contractor will receive 40% of the net proceeds in payment for the capital, services, and technology that it will provide in extracting the oil or gas, while the Philippine government will receive 60% of the net proceeds as owner of the oil or gas. This is the same sharing formula between the Philippine government and Shell, which operates the Malampaya gas field in the West Philippine Sea. This is a win-win formula that China can offer to Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and Indonesia. I understand that the Vietnamese find this formula acceptable. The first whereas clause of every service contract awarded by the Philippine government states that the Philippines owns the gas, the oil and gas. Another provision of every service contract provides that Philippine law governs the contract. To me, these provisions are sufficient to preserve our sovereign rights in the West Philippine Sea, considering that the Chinese state-owned company will be assuming the rights and obligations of the service contractor under the service contract system of the Philippines. As long as the structure in the MOU and TOR is not changed, I can vouch to the Filipino people that Philippine sovereign rights in the West Philippine Sea are preserved. One of the greatest achievements of former President Benigno Aquino III was the filing of the arbitration case against China, which legally secured our EEZ in the West Philippine Sea. If the MOU and TOR arrangement with China pushes through, one of the greatest achievements of President Rodrigo Duterte will be the enforcement of the arbitral award and the application to the wider South China Sea dispute of this formula, bringing much needed peace and stability to our region. Of course, we must have our feet firmly planted on the ground and understand that China may still walk back from its commitment under the MOU and TOR. That is why we must address the serious weakness in UNCLOS, and that weakness is the absence of a mechanism to enforce decisions of arbitral tribunal under UNCLOS. There is no world policeman who can enforce arbitral rulings of UNCLOS tribunals. Each state party to UNCLOS is treaty bound to comply in good faith with decisions of arbitral tribunals organized under UNCLOS. However, a losing state party can go rogue, and there is no enforcement mechanism to stop a losing party from going rogue. As lifelong students of the law, we must find ways to bridge the gap between a final arbitral ruling and its enforcement, between law and justice. The arbitral ruling is the law between the parties, but unless enforced, there is no justice. As every lawyer worth his attaché case knows, enforcement or execution of the judgment or award is the fruit and end of the suit and the life of the law. Under the World Trade Organization, the winning party can impose additional tariffs on the exports of the losing party, thus instituting a built-in mechanism to enforce decisions of arbitral panels under the WTO. In the next round of negotiations to update UNCLOS, the Philippines can propose a similar built-in enforcement mechanism. The privileges of the losing party, losing state under UNCLOS will automatically be suspended for failure to comply with an arbitral ruling within a given period. Thus, the losing state can have its deep-sea mining permits suspended, its voting rights suspended, and its representation in UNCLOS committees, including the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, suspended until it complies with the arbitral ruling. This gives substance to the recognized principle that UNCLOS is a package deal. The ratifying state must accept UNCLOS in its entirety and cannot cherry-pick the provisions it wants to accept and the provisions it wants to reject. As lifelong students of the law, we must always strive to improve our legal systems, learning lessons from disquieting experiences that ultimately drive the progressive development of the law. In the process, we bridge the gap between law and justice, which is the task of every lawyer who has learned law in the grand manner, as envisioned by Dean George Malcolm, the first Dean of the UP College of Law. Let me end this address by quoting what has become our battle cry in this epic struggle to defend our sovereign rights in the West Philippine Sea. This is what I stated 10 years ago on the night I launched my advocacy to defend and preserve our EEZ in the West Philippine Sea. The battle to defend our EEZ from China, the superpower in our region, is the 21st century equivalent of the battles that our forebears waged against Western and Eastern colonizers from the 16th to the 20th century. The best and brightest of our forebears fought the Western and Eastern colonizers and even sacrificed their lives to make the Philippines free. In this modern day battle, the best and brightest legal warriors in our country today must stand up and fight to free the EEZ of the Philippines from foreign encroachment. In this historic battle to secure our EEZ, we must rely on the most powerful weapon invented by man in the settlement of disputes among states, a weapon that can immobilize armies, neutralize aircraft carriers, render irrelevant nuclear bombs, and level the battlefield between small nations and superpowers. That weapon, the great equalizer, is the rule of law. Under the rule of law, right prevails over might. Thank you and a pleasant afternoon to everyone.
Thank you very much, Dr. Antonio Tirol Carpio, for your very inspiring words. This formally closes the conferment ceremony for Antonio Tirol Carpio, Doctor of Laws. There will be a short audiovisual presentation after the recessional in honor of Dr. Antonio Tirol Carpio. Have a delightful evening ahead. Please stand for the singing of the UP Naming Mahal.
UP naming mahal, pamantas ang hirang, magdinig namin, sana'y inyong dinggin. Malayong lupa
be followed by a special audiovisual presentation. We would like to request everyone to stay in your designated rooms, as Dr. Antonio Tirol Carpio will be going there to personally greet all his guests. Individually plated food and drinks will be served in the viewing rooms. Thanks very much for your cooperation and understanding. Ladies and gentlemen, the academic recessional.
All of me. Why not take all of me?
Who is retired Senior Supreme Court Justice Antonio T. Carpio to us?
Take my lips.
There is a lighter side to Antonio Carpio. His classmates call him Tony, while his brothers in the fraternity refer to him as Pio Carps. While I have not seen him dance nor hear him sing, Tony likes to listen to music. He has a great compilation of songs from the 60s and 70s. The songs are from the Beatles, Bee Gees, James Taylor, Carole King.
Here comes the sun, here comes the sun.
Simon and Garfunkel, Broadway, the kind of music I also like.
525,600
Tony is married to Ruth Nguyen, whom he met in college when she was studying in UP. Ruth has a talent for painting.
Finally, my deepest thanks to my family, my wife Ruth, the wind beneath my sails, and my son Ronnie and daughter Audrey.
Justice, it is an honor and privilege to have worked with you, sir. Thank you, Justice, for your selfless service to the judiciary and the country. Serving the country with dignity, choosing principle over ambition. You are a guiding light to the legal community. Your exemplary achievements and meritorious contributions to the rule of law are worthy of recognition.
I was asked to add a note of levity to this occasion. But to those of us who were unfortunate enough to have worked with him, that excellence can be very intimidating. So in a sense, Tony Carpio is a bit of a tyrant. His excellence is a form of coercion. But by all means, Dr. Carpio, intimidate us. Bully us into being better versions of ourselves, if only to approximate the excellence of your work.
His decisions in the court speak for themselves. Time will prove that those decisions is on the right side of history. His current advocacy is protecting our sovereign rights over the West Philippine Sea from encroachments of a bully like China.
And as the firm celebrates its 40th anniversary, the firm bagged a total of 5 prestigious awards. We dedicate all these awards to our honoree.
Para sa akin, isa siyang ehemplo ng paninindigan, ng pakikipaglaban para sa tama at para sa bayan. Isa siyang dakila na kailanman hindi natinag kahit gaano katagilid o kalakas ang kalaban.
Tony left the firm to serve the country, but he left behind a legacy of practicing law in the grand manner. He left behind a moral compass that kept the firm guided towards the path of truth. He was the firm's North Star.
Tahimik, malalim, pero hindi umaatras. Salamat, Justice, sa ehemplong ibinigay ninyo sa amin. Kayo ang tunay na siga. Siga ng Padre Faura, Ama ng Hustisya.
Ako ay Pilipino, ang dugo'y maharlika. Likha sa aking puso, adhikain kay ganda.
Being conferred with a doctorate degree, the highest degree, is an honor itself. Congratulations, sir.
Retired Justice Antonio T. Carpio, whose vision established a solid foundation that made the firm what it is today. Congratulations, Tony.
Obviously, the conferment of this honorary degree will only add to his arsenal of intimidation. Congratulations, Tony.
I am convinced that this dedication to the rule of law, whether the Philippine Constitution or UNCLOS, his commitment for the long-term interests of the country, and his courage and integrity should earn him a spot on the roster of our national heroes.
You rock, Justice Tony. You have been pursuing your advocacies with passion, confidence, and determination. This legum doctor, Honoris Causa, awarded by our dearly beloved University of the Philippines, could not have come to a more deserving awardee. Looking forward to witnessing you conferred with more equally prestigious awards. All the best.
Cheers!